You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you are listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 215 of the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, Ben Eagle. Now, today we're heading to Hertfordshire to meet arable farmer Eveey Hunter, who, alongside her role on the family farm, side hustles for two haulage businesses, does some consultancy work, and is a current member of the Next Generation Forum for the NFU. Eveey chose to not go down the academic route and learnt on the job, working for grain storage and haulage companies before returning to her family's farm. Today, we're going to learn a little bit more about why she chose to do that, as well as the farm business itself, and Eveey's thoughts on the future of ag for the next generation. Eveey, welcome to Meet the Farmers. It's so good to have you on.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And I should say, we are recording this it's near the end of harvest. So it's that time when I sort of think, can I start getting arable farmers back involved? And we've had a few issues with getting this recording sorted. But I mean, how has harvest been going?
Honestly, not the best. Last year, I think, was a bit of a treat. And the year before was a bit of a treat weather-wise. Yeah, we should have been done a week or so ago. A lot of breakdown issues. So the end is in sight. Yeah, hopefully couple more days and we'll be done.
Okay, well, fingers crossed. It looks like we're recording this on the 31st. It looks like there should be some good weather ahead, apart from I think there's a weather front coming through, isn't there, today?
Yeah.
And then you should be okay. What sort of acreage do you have left?
We've got a few hundred acres. It's all in one block now. So yeah, it wasn't that long ago that we were talking about sort of 700 acres over 4 blocks. So yeah, I did an hour and a half move last night. I think it was 23 miles with the combine.
Wow.
Sort of our last big move. But that's the killer. That takes up a lot of time.
Tell us a little bit about your part of Hertfordshire, because you're farming within the M25. So is that Greenbelt? Tell us about sort of what it's like where you are.
Yeah, that is Greenbelt. So the farm I live on, which is just a few hundred acres, we actually rent from Hertfordshire County Council, and that sits on sort of a line of Greenbelt farms that hopefully they'll never sell. Sadly, they would never sell to us either, but you know, we're very happy being Herts County Council tenants. And then we rent sort of half of the land that we farm, and we contract or share farm the other half, which is stretched above the M25, sort of a 30-mile radius we farm in. Yeah, where we live, we're very close to London. We've got all these sort of new issues of ULEZ coming out, and the congestion zone sort of further out. Started to have issues like hauliers thinking they can't get to us. Obviously, our sort of old farm trucks and lorries that we've got, we're not going to be able to travel to certain places with. So, yeah, sort of different challenges this area of the country.
Yeah. And you're the third generation on the farm. It started where you are with your grandparents, so I think came down from Scotland.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's almost a famous story in Hertfordshire. If you've got 3 hours one day, my grandpa will tell you.
Let's talk about the farm business itself. So in addition to the farm, you have an agricultural contracting business and a haulage business. It's very much a family enterprise. So just talk us through, talk us through what's going on.
Yeah, it's completely a family farm. My grandpa probably likes to think he does, but doesn't have a lot to do with it anymore. So it's my parents, myself and my 2 brothers. And then my cousin comes and works in the summer months, and we have a friend of ours that drives a combine. But yeah, apart from that, all family. So we try and keep it that way, to be honest. Like, we ran a baler a couple of years ago and then just found it really hard to find a good member of staff to drive it. So we just decided we weren't going to do that anymore. And as far as sort of other enterprises, we've dipped our toe into most sort of haulage sectors. We did grain haulage, but the money was rubbish. It's very good now, and I kind of wish we had it now. We've done straw haulage. Now I've got a high ab, so we sort of do plant haulage just to keep the money coming in, to be honest. And then in the winter months, we do gritting. which we have done as a family for 10-15 years, and we've got it quite good now. We only work for one big company, and we do sort of 350 sites. So that keeps us very busy in the winter months. Obviously, that's another weather-dependent business, which seems a madness for a farm to go into. But you just have to. We're lucky to have the farm as a base that we can do all of these other things. But yeah, arable farming on its own isn't making anyone a millionaire, unfortunately.
No, absolutely. I mean, you're pretty much all combinable crops.
Yeah, we try and keep it quite simple. This harvest, actually, we just had wheat, barley, beans, and oilseed rape. So it keeps it simple from, being able to combine it, store it, sell it. Keeps it very simple. We have done a bit of AD maize in the past, and we may do again. But yeah, we try and just do combinables, what we know.
Yeah. You mentioned that, so this is very much a family thing, and cousins involved in the season, siblings involved. What's your role? How did your role sort of shape up through the year?
I would love to be able to give myself a job title. I think it would be really long. Kind of everything. Stress remover from my dad. I do everything. I mean, I do all the admin, paperwork, grain marketing, contracts, everything for the farm, for the gritting, for the lorries. I drive as well, so I drive the tractor and trailer or the chase bin. I'll go rolling, or I basically do everything, anything. Dad's unofficial PA.
How long have you been back on the farm?
I think since 2019, I've been back here full time. Dad sort of asked me to come back. I think they say they appreciate you more when you go away for a few years, which I did working for other people. And then he sort of was like, "Oh, do you think you could come back?" So we employed a few people. We had a bookkeeper and a guy who kind of did business forecast for us and things like that. And he just said, "Oh, I'd rather that you came and did it all." So yeah, now I do it all.
Okay. And I take it just over time, you've just gradually taken on more responsibility.
Yeah, or it's more that over time Dad's handed over more responsibility. Yeah. I sort of took on the grain marketing, and then sort of took on dealing with the contract farms, and now sort of aside from the farming, I've sort of taken over the running of the gritting business as well. So hopefully he can have a bit of a more laid back life if an arable farmer knows how to do that.
It's a good question. Tell me about some of the other stuff you do, because as well as all that, you're also still working for a couple of haulage companies. You also do some consultancy as well. Tell me about all that.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of friends who are owner drivers with bulker, like grain bulk lorries. So I'm a qualified transport manager. So obviously I do that for my own haulage business. But I also work as an external transport manager for two other businesses. So I run all their compliance to do with their lorries and to do with task for being able to haul the grain. And then I sort of do audit prep, if you like, for quite a few farms for red tractor assurance and for task as well. It just sort of keeps my eye in. By the time I've done 3 red tractor audits for other farms, mine I can do in my sleep.
Yeah. I was going to say, why do you do all that extra stuff? Obviously, we've already spoken about the economics of arable farming, and there are a number of you in the family involved. But is it purely financial that you're doing this, or are there other reasons as well?
No, I do enjoy it. Obviously, a little bit of extra money helps. I've got a little boy, and that's very expensive. I don't know. I just like to be busy, really. I guess my dad's he's tried every diversification possible. I guess I've just sort of taken that on. I don't like to be not busy. So, like the days that I'm not busy during the winter months, I go and do sort of a bit of bookkeeping for another farmer as well. I just think it's interesting to sort of look at other people's businesses. There's little things that you might pick up or you can take to them. I just think it's interesting, and I'm a bit of an organised freak, so sort of making shiny red tractor and task folders and everything organized for people is just something I enjoy.
Oh my goodness, I think you would be a dream on so many farms.
Yeah,
Um,
I've been told.
This episode is being supported by our primary sponsor, A Plan Rural. Why did I want to collaborate with A Plan Rural? Well, having got to know them, their team shares my passion for giving a voice to farmers, and we are both driven to raise the profile of farming voices to a wider audience. So it seemed quite a good fit. Quite frankly, together we will be able to do a lot more. A Plan Rural do a lot of work on social media themselves, sharing farming accounts and farming stories. They have a rural community blog which shares farmers' experiences, and they also support a growing number of initiatives that champion UK farmers, including this podcast. So a big thank you to A Plan Rural for supporting Meet the Farmers. So you grew up with the farm. You grew up on the farm. When did you know that you wanted to actually work in ag?
Probably not until I was about 15, 16, because sort of, I suppose when I was at primary school, I didn't really know. There was no one else at my school at primary or sort of my first secondary school who had sort of anything to do with farming or any interest. So it was always made to feel like it was a bit weird or different. I suppose when you're young, you're kind of easily influenced. And you think, oh, maybe is it weird? Is it because no one else came from that background? So I just always thought it was like strange. And it wasn't until I left that school after year 9 and went to a school in a more rural place that actually realised I'm so lucky to live here. And you're like, wow, actually, I want to carry this on. I went to an agricultural college, but I was literally there for a couple of months and thought this really isn't for me. And then just went home and worked on the farm. Yeah, it definitely wasn't until I was about 16.
Yeah, I think as just pausing on that fact that you realised that route wasn't for you. Can you take me back to that sort of moment? Because it's quite a big decision. It's quite a brave decision to make. Actually, when you know, and this could go for anything in life, really. When you know that you've gone down a certain route and actually this isn't working for me, and then you do something and you take steps to actually change. Take me back to sort of that time for you and sort of what was going through your mind.
I just always think sort of life's too short if you don't enjoy what you're doing. Like, why would you do something if you didn't really love it? And I had the fully intentions of going to college and doing the 3 years diploma and blah, 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 but it just really wasn't for me. That was all there was to it, really. So I thought, okay, this isn't for me. So I'll try something else, go home, rack up some qualifications. And I would never have ended up in some of the jobs that I ended up in had I have gone to college and sort of not had those 3 years at home doing qualifications and sort of learning on the job.
Yeah. And for anyone out there who is perhaps thinking of sort of taking the route that you did and take that sort of learn on the job route, what would you say would have been the main benefits for you?
For one thing, it was the time. Like 3 years is a long time. Obviously, you would have had a year out on that, like a placement year. But I just think, for me, as in taking 3 years to go to college wouldn't have put me any further ahead in like a career. And I don't think it's the be all and end all. I know a lot of people say, and I've been told in my own family, that if you ever want to take on a tenancy yourself, like they want to see that you've got a degree or they want to see, but it's not always the case, just whatever works for you.
Absolutely. I mean, in terms of, if we're just talking qualifications, you've done your PA1, PA2, your haulage qualifications, but where you are right now, and clearly you have ambitions within the business and moving forwards in your various sidelines as well. Is there anything sort of more specific that you'd like to do sort of training wise to progress your own career? Because actually, when we talk about career progression in ag and we talk about CPD, continuing professional development, so that's going to look slightly different for everyone. So how do you sort of see that? Because you've clearly, throughout your entire career so far, you've been quite forward thinking in terms of where you want to get to and what bits and pieces you need to pick up along the way.
Yeah, personally, I would like to do my basis and facts. So I've got more of a technical knowledge around that because that's probably where I feel maybe at college the one thing I would have missed out on is the sort of technical learning that obviously you would do there. That obviously I just sort of learn on the job, and a lot of the sort of spray plans and things like that are done, but it's sort of something that my dad's always done. But I have started to like go walking with the agronomist and have like weekly meetings with him to try and understand the technical side more. So that's something I would like to do. So that it's not always an assumption that that's sort of what the thing that dad would do. You know, if I needed to take it over, then I would be able to.
You've alluded already at the beginning of the conversation that you had this career before, which and many of those skills you brought back to the business. So just tell me a little bit about that career before going to the farm. Who were you working for? What were you doing?
So I went to work for a big farming and haulage grain storage company up in Royston. They were storing 100,000 ton of grain for merchants and for farmers. So I remember not really looking for anything, but reading the job advert and just thinking like, oh, that sounds like they've literally like written that job description for me.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it was kind of what I was doing at home, but on a bigger scale, obviously with more responsibility and things like that. So I worked there for 2 years and that was great. I mean, it was a very varied role. Some days I was driving a lorry, doing like sugar beet haulage. Some days I was in the lab. Some days I'm just weighing trucks in. Some days I'm loading lorries with like this 6-ton loading shovel. Like it was such a varied role, which suits me down to the ground.
Yeah.
And then I left there, and so I gained lots of experience and interest in sort of grain marketing, which I still have now. And then I left there and I went and did a couple of months doing a harvest in Australia. It was just something that I really wanted to do,
Nice.
go and drive a big chaser bin and a combine. And then I thought, right, I'm looking for a similar role. So I sort of emailed a few other grain storage places. And I spent a lot of the time actually on corn cart because it was sort of, they were one person down. Eveey, can you drive a tractor? So I'm always like, okay. That was a more of sort of assurance-based role, I guess, there. And then that was when Dad sort of said to me, oh, I'd really like for you to come and work back home and do everything that you've been doing, but, back at home. So, yeah, that's how I ended up here.
Okay. I mean, and clearly your dad asked that question, but did you always want to go back to the family farm, or was there part of you that maybe thought, well, maybe I could continue my career outside of the family farm?
I suppose it just depended. And at the time, I was more than happy, and he was sort of offering to give me more responsibility. And, I love working back at the family farm. And as nice as people that you go and work for are, it's never going to be, you're working all these long hours. It doesn't ever personally help you like it does when you're working for your own family.
Yeah.
Like no one's going to appreciate it as much as when you're working for your own family, and it's, my future at the end of the day.
Meet the Farmers is brought to you by RuralPod Media, the only podcast production agency to specialise in the rural sector. We're on a mission to make rural stories mainstream and help businesses, organisations and communities like you tell your story through podcasting. Podcasting is a fantastic way of connecting with your audience, whoever that might be, getting your message out there and networking with leaders in your niche. RuralPod Media can help you by launching your new podcast or helping you with the technical side. We also provide podcast training and an audit service if you already have a podcast, you're not sure where to take it to next. For more information or to book a call, visit ruralpodmedia.co.uk. That's ruralpodmedia.co.uk. Let's talk about the NFU, another one of your hats. So you're on the Next Generation Forum. You're a former chair of that as well. But just for anyone who doesn't know, just tell us a little bit about what it involves being on the Next Generation Forum, and how you got involved in the first place.
So I actually did, before I was on the Next Gen Forum, I went and did a year on they call it SIFAP, so Student and Young Farmer Ambassador Program,
Yeah,
that
of
I
course.
just applied for. So I think there was 12 of us. Unfortunately, it was COVID years, so we didn't get to sort of do as many things or ever meet as much as we did. But that just gave me an insight, I suppose. And they kind of give you like a platform that really boosts your confidence and makes you realize that people, farmers and the general public actually want to listen to young people.
Yeah.
So that hugely boosted my confidence, and I met loads of really nice people, lots of sort of contacts in the industry and in the NFU. And then the opportunity arose to apply for the Next Gen Forum as my sort of regional representative. So I did that. And yeah, then I was chair for a while. Can't remember exactly how long. And then, yeah, for me, it was just too much going on at once to continue the role as chair. But luckily, the vice chairs stepped in. But yeah, I think there's 12 of us on the Next Gen Forum from all industry sectors: pigs, poultry, potatoes, livestock, cattle, sheep. Like, it's a great group of people, but we're all young, and it's sort of the only cross sector group within the NFU. And obviously our main focus is on sort of policy areas affecting young people, like access to land and finance and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just on those sort of future policies, I suppose, and the current policy framework, which of course has been going through quite a big overhaul. What's your view in terms of whether where we are now, whether it's setting up the next generation well enough for the future?
We always say in the forum that everything that comes up is great, but we need to make the industry look more appealing to young people who, to put it bluntly, are more financially focused. Because
Yeah.
at the minute, I think outside looking in, the industry doesn't seem like financially viable to go into. And that's kind of the long and short of it. And I think the young people in the industry always trying to get pushed towards these like niche markets and things like that, which is great. But for example, myself, if I didn't have the family farm and I was purely interested in arable, there isn't a push for young people to go into like main commodity markets. They're
Yeah.
always trying to push them down these sort of farm shop, sort of other niche things, which is great. But yeah, I think it also needs to be shown that you can be a young person and just be an arable farmer or just a sheep farmer, or it's harder, but that it is possible.
If one thing could be done is to make access easier or situation better for younger farmers, what one bit of policy sort of call out would you call for?
Probably the access to land. I see that as the biggest obstacle for people. I think maybe in certain places where there's larger population of smaller farms, that might naturally happen, that young people will take over land that the older generation were farming. But I mean, in places where I live, like there just isn't land. There isn't land that isn't already earmarked for. There's a lot of digging around us, like tarmac digging for gravel all the time,
Yeah.
or earmarked for houses. And it just isn't the land. Or they
Mm.
want people, if it's sort of private landlords, they want extortionate rent for it, and it just sits fallow, and it just seems such a shame.
What does your future look like? That could be for the business. That could be whether you want to pursue more in the NFU. Personally, where do you want to be in a few years' time?
I'd like to have my own sort of career alongside, obviously, still managing the farm at home. I mean, the grain trade really interests me. So I'd quite like to find a career within that sort of fits around what I do already with the farm at home. Because I do think, I mean, having spoke to a few sort of people about this in the grain merchant sort of trade before, they've alluded to it would be helpful for them to have someone sort of on farm, and it would be helpful for me to be on the farm and just sort of kind of wear two hats, I suppose, like I do
Absolutely.
anyway. Um, But yeah, something within the grain trade would really interest me. And I don't know really as far as the NFU role goes. Maybe one day on like a different board. I mean, probably naturally like a crops board. But yeah, not at the moment. But yeah, maybe in the future.
Yeah, see what happens. Just a little more about our primary sponsor, A Plan Rural. They provide bespoke insurance cover for farms and estates. This could be for anything from tractors and machinery to a new exciting diversification venture. So for more information, visit aplan.co.uk/rural. That's aplan.co.uk/rural. We're going to start to round this up. So I'm going to ask you the final two questions. Ask everyone. The first is, Eveey, what would your message to the public be? Any message?
Probably to respect the hard work that farmers do. I think that's recently probably going about the roads with a combine doesn't help people to do that. And just really think about where their food comes from, even if they can make, one little change of one thing that they buy. Just think about it at least.
Brilliant. And your message to your fellow farmers?
Enjoy what you do. As I sort of said earlier, I just think farmers work so hard to really do a job that why would you do it if you didn't really love it? Like if you don't love what you're doing, then change it up a bit, like, do something else.
And finally, a recommendation for a blog, podcast, or social media account to follow, which can be farming or non-farming.
Well, obviously my own Instagram page, the JS Hunter Farm, if you want to see many combine and tractor pictures. Podcasts, Millie Fife, obviously, for food inspo. And a couple of my friends from the Next Gen Forum have just started a podcast called Three Pronged Podcast. So I'm excited to see what they talk about on there. Yeah.
We'll leave it there. Eveey, thank you so much. And thank you so much for coming on when I know you have so much other stuff going on. Not that you don't always have loads of stuff going on. So yeah, but really, really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
That is it for today. Big thank you to Eveey for coming on the show. If you haven't already, please do like and subscribe to the show wherever you're listening. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Next time, to celebrate the 5th anniversary of Just Farmers, the communications project for British agriculture, I'll be joined by its founder, agricultural journalist Anna Jones, and some Just Farmers farmers. So please join me for that. Thanks again to Eveey for today, and to our primary podcast sponsor, A Plan Rural Insurance, for supporting the show. See the show notes for more information, any links we mentioned today. For now, though, I'm Ben Eagle. This has been Meet the Farmers. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a great week.